Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. And today I'm carrying on my interview series of Reflections and Forecasts 2025-2026. When I look back on the past year and look ahead to this year with C-suite across the life science and pharma value chain. And today I'm delighted joined by Abzena CCO Joe Principe, who's going to tell us a bit more about how 2025 was for Abzena and what his predictions are for this week, for this year even. But also we're going to talk about DCAT as well, and what you can expect to see if you meet Abzena at DCAT. So Joe, first of all, it's lovely to see you. I hope the sun is shining in Chicago, even if it's not warm.
A little bit of snow here, Rizwan, but yeah, hopefully toward the end of it.
All right, well, I'm glad to hear it. Look, it's good to see you, Joe. It's been a while
Good to
since you and
see
I
you.
caught up, actually. So, before we start talking about last year and looking back on that, for people not familiar with Abzena, perhaps you can give viewers an overview of who you are as a business and what you actually do.
Yeah, Abzena is a CDMO that concentrates on complex biologic and bioconjugated drug substance. A bit of a smaller niche player, but certainly very important in today's environment.
Right, brilliant. Now, if we look back on 2025, how would you describe that in one word and why?
Good. I would say good is the word. We saw really robust sales last year, record level sales. We saw a good diversification of our client base. We probably did, Rizwan, business with over 100 companies we had never done business with before. So, really good, strong year for us.
All right, well, look, let's talk about that in a bit more depth then. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've had some acquisitions and partnerships as well. So, what were some of the highlights for you from an Abzena point of view for 2025?
Yeah, our business is it kind of covers the full spectrum. So we work with clients who are developing very early discovery type projects, all the way through to companies who are commercializing assets. And we saw a good strength in growth across all those segments. I think maybe it's indicative of a bit of the sort of the improved funding that we're seeing in the industry. But in all segments of the business that we serve, we saw strong growth.
And what do you think drove that growth? Apart from obviously you guys being so good at selling the solutions, but what what actually drove that growth, do you think?
Yeah, I would, my opinion, I think we saw a little calming of the geopolitical uncertainties, although we're jumping into new geopolitical uncertainties. But I think that helped. I think the funding environment continues to improve slowly, probably still some room for improvement there. But, we saw more companies starting new projects, which I think is indicative of, a loosening of the sort of the capital markets.
Well, that's really interesting you say that, Joe, because obviously through doing this, I get to sort of talk to a lot of different companies and obviously a lot of CDMOs. Some have had quite different views in terms of how they've found the
Yeah.
market. So if you look at put it as Abzena aside, and obviously you have done very well from your perspective, looking at the whole sector though, how do you think the sector's performed and what factors do you think have affected its performance?
Yeah, it's a bit hard for me to judge the sector in total because we occupy a fairly small corner of it. I think, it's still a challenge. It's most certainly still a challenge. I think what we've seen is companies taking smaller bites in their programs, where we might have seen them come in with a full program. They're taking a small start, and biting it off piece by piece to preserve cash for these smaller VC funded companies. The bigs, I think, they have the critical mass, and I think we're still seeing them sort of reshoring a fair bit of what they're trying to do, a little bit of a pullback from the East, the uncertainties around the East, but certainly doesn't seem as volatile as it did 2 years ago, those conversations.
Right. And in terms of trends, obviously I know you guys are heavily involved in ADCs and
Yeah,
biologics has been in the profile a lot.
yeah.
So what do you think has driven the growth of biologics and ADCs in the last 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I think we see the growth in ADCs. We're certainly seeing growth in antibody oligoconjugates, radiopharmaceuticals, so different types of conjugated projects. And I think what's driving that is they're targeted towards therapeutic areas where there's really not a lot of alternative therapy out there.
Right.
And that's super important to us, right? There's a patient at the end of everything that we're working on, most of which are, fast tracked or relatively low therapeutic equivalents in the space. So I think that's driving a fair bit of what we're seeing. And, efficacy certainly has something to do with that as well.
Right. Okay. And if you, from a customer perspective, I mean, have you seen in the last 12 months any particular challenges that they've come to you with and highlighted to you, which your people should be aware of?
Yeah, I think it continues, the space continues to operate more or less the same, Rizwan. So, the early development are looking for proof of concept. They're trying to get to data sets that can prove some level of efficacy or a reason to continue developing the molecule as quickly and as, financially efficiently as possible. We continue to see that. Speed and quality drive the early part of the business for sure.
Right, okay. Well, let's look ahead to this year. Now, obviously, we're into March, so you've already had a feel for how the year's gone so far, but as you said, geopolitical situation is changing constantly at the
Yeah.
moment. But from your perspective, for the first quarter of the year so far, how's it been for Abzena? And again, as someone who is obviously responsible for looking at all the revenue, what are your thoughts and predictions for the coming year for the sector?
Yeah, I think we got out of the blocks a little bit slow. January was a fairly slow month. We saw relatively low activity across the board. I look at the things that a person managing sales would look at, the amount of activity that we had, and it seemed to be a little bit slow. We are seeing that accelerate. When you look at the metrics of our business, you see the amount of client interactions, you see the size of our pipeline building pretty precipitously. So it feels like it's starting to generate some momentum.
Right, okay, brilliant. And again, what trends should we be looking out for in 2026? I mean, obviously, ADCs and biologics have done very, very well. From your own point of view, though, what trends do you think we should be looking out for and developing in this year?
I think in a macro scale, there's still going to be a high level of need for potent fill finish in the U.S. That's something that we, constantly see as a demand from our customers. We don't offer the fill finish, but we certainly partner with companies who would. That seems to be a fairly unmet need. We're going to continue to see, I think, pressure on price. But I think as far as the business that Abzena covers, we continue to see strong interest in these type molecules, these conjugated type complex biologics. So, I think for us, that will continue to be the case across the year.
And one question I was going to ask you was that it
Yeah,
just struck me was that actually, as a business, though, you've got sites in the UK, you've got sites
yeah.
obviously in North America, and also on the West Coast, sort of linking more to the Pacific and so on. So, do you see a difference in how the markets are performing, say, North America vis-a-vis Europe or maybe Asia? I mean, is there a difference in how those markets are performing, or you think they will perform going forward?
Yeah, I think I don't see anything different than I've seen historically. I think there's a lot of local options, opportunities in Europe. So you see, the clients there are focused on more local solutions. But the way we operate, Rizwan, is that the sites are all stitched together to provide a service that, delivers an end-to-end solution to develop discovery through development through commercialization. And that requires all three of our sites. So regardless of where the client is located, if they're looking for that level of service, they're going to touch all of our sites.
Okay, fantastic. Now, they always ask people this question. Sometimes they're quite willing to share, sometimes they're not. But what can we expect to see from Abzena this year? So, what are some of the things that we should be looking out for, apart from obviously you growing the business steadily? But what else should we be looking out for from Abzena?
Yeah, I think what we're going to continue to do is stay very tightly focused in the areas of the business that we serve and serve well, right? So I don't think you'll see any radical departure in terms of the sort of technologies that we're implementing, but we will stay focused on those. We've had a pretty successful run of sales that's going to eventually beg the question of continuing to scale in order to accommodate that demand that we're seeing.
Right, brilliant. Well, now let's talk about DCAT because you will be DCAT's fast coming. It will be next week in New York, running
Next
from the
week.
23rd, 26th. Yeah, so it's only a week away, literally. And you guys are obviously there. So if people come to DCAT, one, where can they meet you? First
Yeah,
of
we're
all,
we're camped out in the Lotte in the Palace Hotel. We have a couple suites there where
brilliant,
we'll be hosting meetings.
fantastic. And if they do come and meet you, so what is it in particular you want to talk to people about? Would you be excited to learn more about from people who are coming to meet you?
Yeah, I think that again, familiarizing ourselves. So DCAT, well, and we meet customers new and old. So we'll be obviously continuing, ongoing business discussions with clients where we're doing the work, and we'll obviously be introducing ourselves to clients that don't know us for the type of work that we do. But given the slate of meetings that we have, it seems to be a pretty high level of interest this year. So we'll continue to share the brand, elevate the brand, and make sure that folks know what we do out there.
Brilliant. And final question for you. I mean, given that we are looking ahead to the year, what message would you want to give to the industry from Abzena for 2026?
I think that the segment that we operate in continues to be of increasing importance. The message I would say is we serve it well. We have really top tier scientific capabilities combined with, I think, a good client experience, and that's super important for us. Here's one that, too often we forget the end state of what we do is a patient that's
Yep.
involved in a trial, who needs a medicine that maybe doesn't exist. So I think, we all just need to reaffirm that commitment.
Brilliant, Joe. Well, look, I appreciate your time out on your very busy schedule to talk to me this morning. So, viewers, if you're at DCAT next week, then meet Joe and the team on the 23rd, 26th in New York City at the Lotte Palace. Hopefully, I pronounced that
Yep,
correctly.
that's right.
But if you can't meet Joe and the team there, they are at many, many other events
Yeah,
across the globe. And so you can check out their website. The link will be below the video, or follow them on LinkedIn and learn where you can meet Abzena next. Or, in fact, message Joe directly if you want to got any questions for
yep,
Joe and the team. I'm sure we'll
for
be happy
sure.
to answer them. So, Joe, once again, thank you for your time. Viewers, thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, stay well and stay safe. Bye bye.
Pleasure.